It's Monday, January 11th, 2021. I'm Greg Nibbler, and this is 2Box Live. Yes, indeed. Hello, everyone. I am Greg Nibbler, and thank you for joining us wherever you're watching. We do appreciate it. We're broadcasting live across a number of platforms, so hit subscribe to 2Box Media, TWO Box Media. This is our show. If it's your first time joining, thanks. Welcome, because this is our CES coverage, CES 2021, unlike any CES that has ever happened, because it's entirely virtual. I myself have covered several. I think this would be my 8th CES that I've covered, but all those other times I've been down in Las Vegas with about 200,000 other people, all in person. You have hundreds, if not thousands of booths, multi-million-dollar displays, all kinds of things. But this year, much like everything else, going completely virtual. It's all online. So it's kind of a unique experience for all of us. It started very early this morning. For Pacific Coast people, it started about 4 a.m., and that's when I started watching conferences. We're all watching virtually. There's kind of a different port that you can go through for CES people, but then it's broadcast to the world as well. So we're seeing all these companies unveil their products in ways that we've never seen before. You don't get the hands-on experience like you used to, but this is where we're at, and it's still some really cool stuff that has come out. And so we're going to recap some of day one, a couple of things that I found very interesting coming up too. We have interviews with TCL and the Indy Autonomous Challenge. We got those for you, and we're broadcasting live, so we can take your comments, questions as we go through. But to kick it off, let's go all the way back to over 12 hours ago, depending on when you're watching, and talk about some cutting edge screens that we got to see. So with LG starting it off this year, we knew that we're going to see some of their OLED televisions. There's a lot of that's out there, but I'm going to talk about some of the kind of spec things that could be coming out at some point. And one of the things they highlighted right out of the gate were the transparent screens. This isn't the first time we've seen transparent screens, but it does seem like it's coming closer and closer to fruition to actually be something we could see out in the wild at some point. Of special ones that they showed, they talked about different ways that these transparent screens could be used for, say, restaurants. You could be ordering things and have this up there. You could see it in shopping malls. There's also one for a bed that they showcased, and this is an actual frame for your bed. And it's part of this idea where everything in your house is going to be incorporated into each other. This is a theme we've seen with tech for a while, but this particular one, it would pop up out of the end of your bed. You'd have a normal kind of display screen there at first, and then it can roll up and actually broadcast things. There's some specific tech that they said behind it of things that they've been able to do with it, and that includes getting it down to, it's about 40% transparent. So that's kind of a unique aspect of it in that part of it. You've also got some other things that they showed with this. And again, just kind of a unique use of this technology. And they have that there. That one's a 55-inch OLED screen that they're going to be using for that. You go from there, you've got, 40% transparency. Previous, they've achieved only 10% transparency, so that's kind of a first on that. But again, taking a look at some of this technology that we could be seeing coming out into the world at some point. Transparent OLED displays. Not a new thing to be talked about, but definitely a new use case, and really cool to see companies still working on that and working towards something like that. Going from there, another big theme, and this has been one that's been on for a couple of years now when it comes to CES, and it's the idea of rollable screens or even foldable screens. Foldable, we've seen with Samsung with the Galaxy Fold. You had Royal FlexPly. They even had another one out this year, but LG also giving us another little bit of a teaser for this rollable phone that they've been talking about for a while. This one looks to be a little bit more put together. Again, since we're not in person, it's not like we're getting hands-on experience with this, but they did show a video of it. And the idea is that you'd have kind of a normal screen. You could press a button, and then it just enlarges. The screen rolls up, and you would be able to turn it into almost a phablet, if not a tablet altogether. And that is, like I said, something LG's been bringing up for a while. This is supposedly something that could be coming out by the end of this year. Again, we've heard it before, and also production on a lot of things is It's kind of a little bit up in the air, I think, for a lot of companies right now, obviously because of the pandemic kind of delaying things. But if that were to come out, this would be one of the first ones like this to make it out in the marketplace. And I love this idea. It would need to be pretty sturdy so that I don't break it, but I've talked about that about pretty much any product. I don't know how you do a case for something like this. That's another big question mark that we would have. But the LG rollable, and that's what it would be called, again, shown there kind of during their press conference. One other showcase of rollable tech, so this seems to be a theme so far for CES Day 1, came from TCL. And they had not only a phone, they have a phone that also kind of showcases rollable OLED technology. But on top of that, they've got another one that would go along with this, and that would be the idea of an entire scroll that would come out. And this is one that seems so futuristic. You think there's no way that this could actually be close to coming out. And we don't know when it would come out, but the idea behind it, I am a fan of this. And you see there, it's somebody who's just rolling this thing out, almost like a scroll. And this is tech that's been talked about for a decade. I think the first time I went to CES, like back in 2009, there was discussion of this, that people were working on this. This is the closest I feel like that we've come to actually seeing something. There is the rollable OLED televisions that LG does have, but something that's like actually a hand scroll. I mean, you can see like going along these lines, eventually this could be something you could bring somewhere and maybe slap it up on a wall and you'd have a television there. That's the kind of tech that I cannot wait for. Again, we don't know when this would happen, but that's kind of what we're looking at. It seems like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but that's TCL showcasing that technology there. So some interesting potential use cases down the line for screens. Always fun to see what people are doing with that. Something else cutting edge that we got to see, it was from Samsung, and it's the idea of the use of robots in your home. First off, starting off with a robot vacuum, something we're familiar with. I've talked about it before. I've got one here at my house. You always name them. Mine is named Frank. But this is something else. This is coming from Samsung, and it's a cutting edge robot vacuum that they've got. And there's a few things that are kind of unique about this. So it's called the JetBot 90 AI Plus. I want to make sure I get the name right there. JetBot 90 AI Plus. And the reason that they're saying this one is really special is because of the tech that's on board it. It's utilizing LiDAR. It's got object recognition. It's got cameras on it. And this very high-tech AI, they worked with Intel on this, that can identify things, they're saying, better than any other robot vacuum that's come before it. And that's one of the key things. It can scan this room. It can know what different objects are. And again, this is according to what they've talked about. It's got 3D sensors. It can know whether there's a spill or, let's just be honest, if you have pets, maybe there's something you don't want your robot vacuum to go try to clean up. It can identify that specifically. They can identify messes it should not roll itself through. So that is using some pretty high-end artificial intelligence. And they said that, it can also identify pets. It will go back to its station when it needs to, map out rooms, stuff that we've seen before. But utilizing LiDAR on there is pretty cool use of that tech. And that's what they're seeing for this robot vacuum. Again, all part of this whole plan to incorporate all of your products into one. There's certainly some other products that came out along with this that they showcased, but that's just one idea. The JetBot 90 AI Plus, just a souped up robot vacuum. Going from there, let's talk about another thing that I myself maybe a little apprehensive with sometimes. If you know me, if you watch this show, sometimes a little bit apprehensive about some of the robots, but this one, I mean, I have to say, take my money. I'm ready to have this. It's essentially a robot butler. So they've got a couple of different robots that they did show. All this idea of incorporating everything in your house into one ecosystem that learns from you. That's the other key component here, is using artificial intelligence to learn your habits, learn what you do to make your life easier. But this one would do something that I think I would have a hard time finding. Maybe if you're out there watching right now, maybe this isn't something you would want, but I would be all for it. It is a robot that can do your dishes for you. And this would be a home robot that you would have. It's called the Bot Handy. And this Bot Handy has, in fact, a hand, and it is able to identify glasses. This hand is so specific, it knows not to crunch things or destroy things. It knows how to apply the proper pressure. That's something in robotics that that pretty much every company that's working on robotics has been trying to study this. And it's that textile feedback to know not to, crush human hand. It's able to pick up a flower or something along those lines and know what its environment is. Also bringing you glasses of wine. I mean, at this point, I think that's, again, the proper use of technology that we could all be for. Have a robot that does your dishes and brings you wine. I'm all for that, but that's showcasing that. So it's the Bot Handy, and pretty cutting edge use of robotics. We don't know when that's actually going to be out in the world, but that's something that Samsung's working on, and they're not the only company working on robots. I think that's something we're going to be seeing a lot of here for CES, but always cool to see that new stuff and where they envision things going. All right, well, from there, we also, of course, had some interviews, and I talked about that earlier on here in the show. We're going to be talking to a couple of different people. We've got some of the folks behind the Indy Autonomous Challenge. So Paul Mitchell is going to be joining us here in a little bit to talk about that. Before that, though, we sat down and spoke to TCL. Very excited to have Bruce Walker, who's a product evangelist for TCL, to talk about their new televisions. We're talking about 8K, MiniLED, definitely both terms being utilized a lot here at CES this year. We talked about TCL's new lineup, so that's coming up here in just a minute. We are live. Drop in your comments as we go through. We'll take a quick break, and we'll come right back with Bruce from TCL right here on 2Box Live. And welcome back to 2Box Live. Of course, our continuing coverage of CES. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining us. Every year, it is so exciting to see what companies come out with. This kind of sets the tone for the whole year in electronics, and television's always a big part of it. And TCL has been a huge part of CES over the last few years, especially making a lot of splashes, a lot of waves, taking on all the other competitors that were out there, coming out with some really great products. And right now, I'm very excited to talk about TCL and their new lineup. Joining us, we've got Bruce Walker, product evangelist for TCL. Bruce, hello. How you doing?
Excellent, Greg. How are you doing today?
Doing great, getting through this virtual CES. It's a strange year, but still exciting to see everything coming out. And I watched the TCL presentation today, and some definitely some interesting trends with the televisions. And I think one of the things I wanted to start off first, something that a lot of people are always bringing up, is 8K. We see some 8K televisions that have been out there before. There's still not a ton of content for it, but TCL is making the push to have this whole new lineup be all 8K. And I wonder if you could talk to us about it, maybe a little bit behind the decision to go with 8K.
Sure, yeah, it's a very exciting evolution for us, and like everything is, I've been in the industry for 30 some odd years, and first was there's no high definition content to watch, and then there was no 1080p content, and then there's no 4K content, and now there's no 8K. But a couple of things are making it very, very exciting to be in TCL with 8K. And again, just thanks again for having me. I'm really excited to be here, even if it is virtually. With TCL, we're very proud that we take this performance and we want to make it achievable, accessible for more and more customers. So when we say that every new 6 Series Roku TV coming out this year is going to be 8K. The 6 Series is really the legendary for the great combination of extreme performance as well as affordable pricing. So to have 8K there, and technically, while as you had mentioned, we're waiting for 8K content to come aboard, which like everything else, it's going to. What 8K really does with our ingenious engineers have created our AI upscaling, which in a nutshell can just make today's non-8K content look breathtaking. So that's really the two parts of that, our accessibility and the fact that we're going to be doing great content and great upscaling.
I think a couple of things there. Accessibility really does kind of sum up a lot of what TCL's done over the years, and I think a lot of people have agreed with that, just bringing some of these televisions, these higher end ones, to more people. Now with that, the AI PQ, I believe, is what technically the AI engine is called, and I could be wrong on that, but I wanted to talk about that upscaling aspect. So when you're looking at this new lineup, I guess, does size make a difference when you're looking at something like 8K? Does a bigger, obviously is going to be a better quality, but what does 8K bring to maybe some of the smaller sizes of televisions?
So we see 8K really being important and relevant in like the 65-inch and larger screen sizes for us. And that's really where we're going to have the majority of our focus is on those larger screen sizes because the pixels are getting bigger and bigger. And just you can imagine trying to describe an arc. If you've got twice as many pixels to do that, you're going to have that smooth arc and not a bunch of stair steps. Even if, again, with that AI processing, some of that arc is being artificially created, it's still going to give you that smoothness on the larger screen sizes because with the way the world is, people are home more and more and they still want that movie experience. We think 8K and large screen sizes are going to be able to give that to them.
Great. Well, yeah, great to talk about that. And just, I think that's really interesting when you brought up the content. There may not be content yet, but we said the same thing about HD. We said the same thing about 4K.
Yeah.
It's going to come. So that's cool. You can kind of scale up in the meantime. Another big thing that's been talked about, especially this year and with TCL with your lineup, is mini LED. And there's some specific things that you're doing with that, with a new lineup. And again, I wondered if you could kind of walk through what it is that you announced and what it is that kind of stands out.
So the 1 minute story to put all this in perspective is really how an LED TV works, and there are three major components to it. There's the backlight in the back of the TV that generates your brightness. It goes through things like a color filter to give you all your colors, and then in the front is the actual LCD panel. So the heart of the picture is that backlight, and the better it can perform in a whole bunch of different parameters, the better the picture is going to be. On a traditional flagship TV from my competitors, you might have a couple hundred LEDs comprising this backlight that'll give you a nice bright picture. Back in 2019, when we first introduced mini LED, we had upwards of 25,000 micrometer class mini LEDs. So just brighter, smoother, better control over the lighting, all sorts of great benefits to it. Last year, we introduced on our 6 Series, the second generation mini LED backlight, and then this year we're talking about our new technology called OD Zero. And the basic version of it is if you've got a TV here and this is the backlight and this is the panel, the closer those can be, the better overall advantages you're going to get for our customers for viewing and for performance. So with OD Zero, we've gotten it from our first generation was about 20 millimeters, a little under an inch, to the new one coming out this year is going to be 0. So super, super thin, super sexy. Plus all sorts of benefits, and it's funny where, for years, we've been doing this a while, there was a big movement a few years ago to have as thin a TV as possible, but everything you did back then to make the TV thinner made the picture worse. Now, with OD Zero, we're going to get really, really thin and improve performance for our customers.
Another trend, certainly, that we've seen over the last couple of years, and this is definitely prevalent, is getting bigger televisions. And especially, you mentioned, before people are at home more, so you want to build out those home theaters. Maybe if you didn't before, now is the time to do it. We're all there watching stuff. But 85-inch televisions, that is something that TCL came out with. Can you talk to us about that lineup?
So we're calling it our XL collection of TV sets, where we're going to be showing large screen sizes for our customers, introducing a couple of versions of it throughout the year. But it's really bigger is better. Some interesting trends we happened throughout the year last year was obviously people buying TVs in unprecedented numbers. A lot of smaller TVs for all the people that are at home and doing Zooms meetings like this versus in person. But the real growth was in 70-inch and above. It was about a 75% year-over-year growth in screen sizes, 75-inch and larger. And we are very excited to announce our XL collection for 2021. That's going to be basically 3 different TV sets, almost right out of the gate. In Q1, you're going to see our 85-inch 4 Series TV. That's going to bring that large screen size, again, to a really different level of achievability for customers. And then later in the year, we're going to have a performance version that's going to have quantum dots, contrast control zones, and then you're going to see the rollout of our new flagship TV with that OD Zero later in the year. But it's all going to start in Q1 with that customer that's going to be able to have that immersion that they wanted to see in the movie theaters, and now they can see it at home. I did just an interesting math study because I was wanted to make sure people understood that an 85-inch TV is not going to overpower them in a negative way. And I realized that going from a 65-inch screen to an 85-inch screen, you're getting 70% more viewable area, but it's less than 18 inches wider. So in terms of being able to fit
Wow.
on a stand or on a stand or on a wall, it's not like the olden days when you went to a 60-inch projection TV. It was 6 feet deep and 800 pounds. So getting into this size is going to be great for our customers.
I had one of those televisions back in the day, and yeah,
Oh
it
yeah.
weighed like 400 pounds. I swear, it was
Oh,
it
it's
was a pain to get
yeah.
rid of. This sounds much nicer. Well,
Yes.
going from there, and just talking about TCL's lineup, which again, everybody can check them all out too with TCL and all these really great products. I wanted to ask you just a question. I've been to the last several CESs, broadcasting down there. We would have a booth. Now this year, I'm at my home studio. We're all
Yep.
remote. What is it like for you, just as a product, evangelist? Normally, I'm sure you're running around from booth to booth.
It was.
What's this like?
I mean,
What's it been like for
being,
you?
part of this job, being with TCL, obviously, best TV company, technology company out there, but CES is, nerdvana. So being able to see everything
Yeah.
from the cars to the robots to the drones, walking up and down the strip, there's no place like Vegas. I think there's a benefit in that, when we're doing this, it's a little less hectic. It's a little, we can be a little more measured and make sure we can communicate to our customers and through your viewers and listeners it doesn't get all messed up too much. It's a little lonely.
Right.
When I set this mic down, it's going to be me and my dog down in my basement. But able to digest what's happening a little more. And they said, especially coming off the holidays, it was kind of nice not to have to get on a plane January 2nd to be gone for 2 weeks from the family. So it's been a curse and a blessing.
That's true. Yeah, the non-plane ride, I'm okay with that part right now.
Yeah,
But
right.
definitely interesting this year. But still, really great to see that everybody's got these new products out, including TCL with your lineup. And Bruce, I want to say, thank you very much for joining us here on Two Box Media, Two Box Live, just to talk about this, and congratulations on the new lineup. And I hope you have a great CES.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy the show. See lots of cool stuff. And again, thank you for taking time out of your day to chat with me.
Absolutely. There we go. Bruce right there, product evangelist for TCL. And thank you everybody for joining us here on Two Box Media. We've got all the coverage of CES. Follow us, Two Box Media, wherever you get your content. We'll be there, and we'll be back with more soon. Welcome back to our CES 2021 coverage. I'm Greg Nibbler, and thanks for joining us here for Two Box Media. Follow us online wherever you are at. And of course, we're keeping you up to date with everything that's going on at CES and all of the cutting edge technology. And certainly, autonomous vehicles are a big part of that. And coming up in October, it's going to be something called the Indy Autonomous Challenge with, you guessed it, autonomous vehicles racing against each other. And we have one of the proprietors of this event. We have the president of Energy Systems Network. It is Paul Mitchell joining us. Paul, thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
Ever since I found out about this, I've just been excited to hear about how it all works and just the idea of autonomous vehicles and then racing against each other. It's kind of like the combination of a lot of worlds all at once. And for everybody out there who is new to this, could you kind of walk through what was the precipice? What inspired this to even get going? And then maybe explain a little bit of what the challenge is itself.
Sure. For those that are familiar with the autonomous vehicle industry, you'll know that in 2005 there was a competition, a prize competition similar to the one we're putting on, that DARPA held called the DARPA Grand Challenge, and that in 2005 really kicked off the autonomous vehicle industry. A lot of company founders left universities and started companies. I think Waymo and Cruise Automation, a number of other tech companies, kind of got their start through the DARPA Grand Challenge. So we saw that and wanted to bring back the excitement of the DARPA Grand Challenge, and thought what better place to do that than the most famous racetrack in the world at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And unlike the DARPA Grand Challenge, which was a time trial and the vehicles mostly traveled at 5, 10, 20 miles an hour, we said we need to push autonomous technology to the absolute limit. And the best way to do that is in a head-to-head high-speed race with vehicles going 180 and 200 miles an hour against one another.
Well, a head-to-head race certainly makes it definitely exciting, for a lot of reasons. And when we talk about that, I guess when it comes to the technology being utilized, I'm always interested to see how different companies, because you mentioned Waymo and all these other companies that are working on autonomous tech, but a lot of them do it maybe a little bit differently. So when it comes to these vehicles, is it utilizing LiDAR? Is it radar? What kind of tech, I guess, is behind it?
Right. So for our autonomous vehicles, we're actually kind of using a variety of different technologies. These vehicles will be equipped with optical sensors, with radar, with LiDAR, GPS positioning. There'll actually be some vehicle to vehicle communication capabilities, and then even V2I or vehicle to infrastructure capabilities. The reality is we want to give the teams every tool in the autonomous toolkit, if you will, to be able to write their software and control these vehicles at high speeds. And most importantly, control these vehicles when they're not sure what the other vehicles are going to be doing. So in that sense, this is really, we think, the most advanced autonomous vehicle, certainly the fastest autonomous vehicle ever designed, because of all the tech that's going into each one of these race cars.
When you talk about the vehicle itself and then these teams that are programming it, I guess one, you mentioned one of the fastest, so I'm curious, how fast do they actually go? And what are some of the variables that these different teams are going to be dealing with when they're programming it?
So in terms of the speed of the vehicle, it's a modified Indy Lights vehicle produced by Dallara, a famous race car manufacturer that builds actually the vehicles that are used in the IndyCar series. So that vehicle is capable of driving over 200 miles an hour. We believe these vehicles will push that 200 mile an hour barrier, but probably in a competition setting, they're likely to be operating close to 180, 190 miles per hour. When you ask about sort of what is it that the teams are competing around, what kind of challenges do they face, this is a 2-year competition, so the competition is already well underway, and the first year of it is really around virtual simulation racing. So the teams are already having to show that their software algorithms are capable of operating a vehicle, in this case for the first year, in a virtual environment that's designed by our simulation partner Ansys, running on Microsoft Cloud Azure. And as they prove out their capabilities, then they get access to the cars. They'll have test dates at the track. They're going to have to show that they can control these vehicles at high speeds. And then even after doing that, then we'll have time trials to determine whether they qualify to race on October 23rd, 2021. So in addition to the technical challenges, the teams are also having to raise funds. They're having to, get sponsors for their own vehicles. So there's a race team element to it that they have to go through.
Talking about today in particular, or depending on when people are watching this, CES goes over a few days, but you did unveil the autonomous vehicle itself, and that was one of the big things that you were going to be doing. And you mentioned it a little bit, that it's an Indy car light. I may be saying that wrong, but could you speak a little bit more to the vehicle and the unveiling?
Sure. So the vehicle is based on what's called an Indy Lights, which is a kind of a feeder series to the main IndyCar series chassis called the IL-15, produced by Dallara. They then modified this vehicle to be able to be autonomous. So we put in Dallara and our partners and sponsors, working very closely with Clemson University, put in a drive-by-wire system so the vehicle is able to operate, totally in a digital realm. Doesn't require anybody to turn a steering wheel or press the brake. And then all the autonomous technology is really put where the driver typically sits within the vehicle. So if you see a picture of it where the cockpit is and the driver's usually sitting in there, that's where the sensor suite and the advanced computing capabilities were put into the vehicle, because really that's the only space that was left within that chassis. So what you see is a really slick looking open wheel race car that people are used to seeing in the Indy 500, but just without a driver and replaced with sensors and a robot brain.
Well, and I mean, that's just really impressive in its own right. And like you said, it's got all this different tech that's kind of behind it, that's being utilized a lot of different ways that people try autonomy. But racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on top of it, I mean, that's tremendous in its own right. And talking about this challenge, you mentioned it's been going on for a year already, but in October in particular, that's when this kind of big showdown is going to happen. And what can people expect with that? And can we all watch it?
Yeah. So first of all, the idea of doing it at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway just made perfect sense, because the Speedway was actually built, 100 plus years ago for the purpose of, at that time, proving out the early automobile technology. And so Ford and Chrysler early auto innovators brought their vehicles and raced them head to head at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we're basically kind of going back to the future now and doing that with autonomous vehicles. In terms of October 23rd, what can you expect? Well, we're not quite sure because no one's tried this before. We know that there will be autonomous vehicles there, and we know that they're going to try to race each other head to head. We'll obviously have done some testing and validation ahead of time, so we hope to have a really good race. It'll be 20 laps, 50 miles, so just long enough to show that there's a real endurance challenge to it. And it will be open to fans if folks want to come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's the mecca of racing. It's a great place to visit. Just gives me chills every time I go in there. And then in terms of watching it live over the internet, I'm confident it'll be streamed, whether that's through the IMS Productions or IMS website or some other partner to be determined. But I'm confident that people will be able to view it. We have teams coming from around the world, 11 different countries. So obviously they're going to have fans and supporters back home that want to watch.
So cool. I mean, and like you said, nobody's done it before. So yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to know what to expect exactly from it, other than it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And one final question for you. Have you all ever thought about, if this is really successful, which I'm sure it's going to be, could you foresee this as being a whole separate motor racing sport down the line?
We never went down this path expecting it to be, a motorsports event. This is really meant to be an innovation challenge to push industry further. And so, to the extent we do another challenge, it would continue on in that mission. It would be another technology challenge working with universities to try to prove out technology. But at this point, we're not there yet. We're just focused on trying to get to October 23rd and frankly, move the industry forward. And if that generates success, we'll see where we go from there.
Well, Paul, it's really exciting and fun to see how this tech is being utilized in the rapid advancement just of autonomous technology. You had the competition in there and university students in 11 countries. I'm sure everybody's going to want to win, so we'll get to see some really, really neat advancements, I would imagine, come out of this. And for everybody out there who wants to follow along, what is the best place for them to go to kind of keep track of where you're at?
Yeah, the simplest place to go is just www.indyautonoumoschallenge.com. Obviously, we're also present on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the social media. But kind of the core page to visit is our homepage at indyautonoumoschallenge.com.
Nice. Well, Paul, I want to say thank you very much for joining us to talk about this. Really appreciate it. Best of luck with success in this. And it's really cool to see where it's all going to go. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Take care.
You too. All right, very cool. So the Indy Autonomous Challenge, finding out more about that. I mean, that's kind of the perfect idea of what CES is about, and seeing, cutting edge technology, how it's being utilized, and you add a competition in there. I definitely hope that's going to be live streamed, and it sounds like it will be later on. All right, thank you everybody for watching. Again, this is Two Box Media, so hit subscribe, whatever platform you watch on. We'll be keeping you up to date with everything going on at CES 2021 all this week.